As you build interfaces in Health Connect Cloud, you will often need to consume files from and output files to specific directories accessible by verified users. In this video, you will see how to configure your Health Connect Cloud deployments to use Amazon S3 storage as a directory for secure file transfer. Let's consider a typical scenario where secure file transfer is needed. Perhaps a business service in your production watches a directory for files containing batches of HL7 v2 messages. When it recognizes a file is present, it consumes the file and routes the messages to a business process, which transforms the messages and sends them to a business operation. The operation outputs a file containing the newly transformed messages to another directory. An on-premises version of HealthShare Health Connect accesses a local file system, but in a cloud deployment, you need to configure Secure File Transfer Protocol, or SFTP, at the tenant level, meaning files in the SFTP storage location will be accessible by all cloud deployments on that tenant. Let's see how to configure this in the Cloud Services portal. If you have access to more than one tenant, confirm you are working in the tenant on which you wish to set up SFTP. To switch to a different tenant, select the name in the upper right corner of your Cloud Services portal. Navigate to the Tenants menu group and view the Files page. If you see a message indicating Secure File Transfer is not enabled, contact the InterSystems Cloud Delivery team to activate this feature on your tenant. AWS will be the only provider shown, as Amazon S3 buckets are the only native storage option for SFTP in Health Connect Cloud. Under the provider, select the region in which you would like your S3 storage to reside. It is good practice to select the region where your deployments exist, or one that is geographically close. Click Change Region to confirm your selection. This reveals a new toggle that shows S3 storage is deactivated. This is the default setting. It prevents the consumption of unused cloud resources and provides greater security for your deployments. Click the toggle to activate S3. This will take about a minute. Once S3 is activated, click the toggle that appears to enable SFTP storage. As with the previous step, this will take a minute or two. Once SFTP is enabled, a user management area will appear with an admin user already created. This user will be able to access all subdirectories within this tenant's S3 bucket and cannot be deleted. Click Create User to add authorized users and indicate the file paths they are permitted to access. These paths correspond to folders and subfolders in this tenant's S3 bucket. Let's explore how this works. To create a user, you must define two fields: the paths that the user can upload to, and a tag to describe the user more meaningfully than the randomly generated username string. When you enter a path, the appropriate directory will automatically be created if it doesn't already exist. Let's create a new directory called HL7in and add a tag indicating that this user is for City Hospital to upload batches of HL7 messages. Click Submit to create the SFTP user. When an SFTP user is created, an associated private key file is created. Users will need this to connect to the S3 bucket for this tenant and to upload via SFTP. You can download the key file by clicking the key icon and should store it in a secure location. From this pane, you can also edit user paths or delete users that are no longer needed. With the user created, you can now initiate an SFTP connection to your tenant's S3 bucket. You can transfer files using the command line or an SFTP client, provided you have your username and private key. Let's open a terminal window to connect using the command line. In this example, we are using a Mac terminal, but native Windows or Ubuntu terminals work the same way. Below your set of users, you will find a box labeled SFTP Connection Instructions. Copy the command provided and paste it into your terminal window, replacing the placeholders for the private key location and your username. If your terminal session is not in the same directory as your private key file, you will need to provide the full path of the private key file. After entering this command, you should see a success message indicating that you are connected to the S3 bucket. An error message related to file permissions commonly appears at this stage. Your private key file cannot have permissions enabled for multiple users, or the SFTP connection will not work. To resolve this, run the chmod 400 command on the file on Unix, or right-click the file on Windows and remove permissions for all users besides yourself. Once your SFTP connection is established, you can copy files to the S3 bucket. Navigate to the path where you are permitted to upload by running the cd command and pasting in the path associated with your user. Run the pwd command to confirm you are in the proper directory. Then use the put command to upload a new file. Here we will put HL7 messageset1.txt into the S3 folder, uploading it to the S3 folder for this tenant. Now, let's look at some important settings you will need to configure in your business services and operations in order for them to interact with this SFTP location. Business services and operations that retrieve data from or upload data to this location will be of particular class types. For business services, use an HL7 FTP input service, and for business operations, use an HL7 FTP output operation. The wizard for creating business services and operations will configure this automatically if you selected HL7 and FTP during their creation. Recall that these business hosts use adapters to connect to the SFTP storage location. HL7 FTP input services use the FTP inbound adapter, and HL7 FTP output operations use the FTP outbound adapter. Under Basic Settings in your business service or operation, enter the file path that has been permitted for your SFTP user, available in the table on the SFTP page of the Cloud Services portal. In the FTP server field, enter the server address of your SFTP bucket, which is part of the command you copied to connect. Enter 22 as the FTP port. In addition to these basic networking fields, you will configure the SFTP settings in the business host. This is where your key authentication needs to be set up. Recall that you previously downloaded a private key for the SFTP user you created. You will need to create a public key that pairs with that private key. Then add both keys to your Health Connect Cloud server. For more information on creating public keys and adding them to Health Connect Cloud, refer to Health Connect Cloud documentation. Returning to the settings, enter the letter K in the SFTP authentication methods field. This represents key authentication. In the following two fields, enter the file path on your server where your private and public keys have been stored. Refer to documentation or contact the InterSystems Cloud team for assistance getting your key files onto your Health Connect Cloud server. Click Apply to save your changes to the business host. The last item to configure in this business host is SFTP passphrase credentials. Even though you are using a key pair for authentication, you need to create a credential to define the SFTP username, which will be associated with those keys. Create a new credential that defines the SFTP username by navigating to Interoperability, Configure, and Credentials. Here you will create a new credential that defines the SFTP username this production will use for SFTP access. A password is not necessary since the authentication will take place via a private-public key pair. Once you have saved this credential, return to the settings for your business host and select it in the SFTP passphrase credentials field. Fill out these settings for any business hosts that will use SFTP, and consider creating dedicated SFTP users for each interface that will consume or output files to SFTP locations. You have now configured secure file transfers to and from your Health Connect Cloud deployment and edited business host settings to interact with this secure storage. For more detailed information on individual settings, refer to Health Connect Cloud documentation.